Hey, this is John Bohlinger with Premier Guitar. Today we're talking about my column, Last Call. This series is, or this episode is called Johnny Can't Read. But before I get into it, I want to give a shout out to my good buddies at Keeley Electronics. Keeley sponsors the column, and more importantly, they make this amazing gear that is with me on every gig. Right here on the intro, you're hearing a little bit of that Hydra and a little bit of their Halo, which are just amazing effects that I cannot turn off. So thank you, Keeley. Now, back to the column, Last Call. I've got my buddy, partner in crime, Chris Keys right here. Welcome to Chateau Relaxo.
Love this place. My home away from home.
Yeah, right. So this week we're talking about that column, Johnny Can't Read.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's 100 years ago, a hit song would sell literally millions of copies of sheet music. And back in the day, there was so many people read music, and reading music was just part of, I mean, this predates television, of course, and predates the internet, and predates even recording music to a certain extent, or at least it being, widely used. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, people would buy a ton of sheet music and then sit around the piano and play, and people would sit around and sing. And my father still does that.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 88, and he grew up in a family that does that, and they still do it. And now, reading music is so rare. I bet, as a professional musician, it rarely comes up. And when it does come up, it's usually a pretty simple, like in a session it might come up, and they'll write maybe one little signature part or something like that. Fairly easy.
Now, is it something that can you read sheet music?
Yeah. I actually learned in the Billings, Montana Public Orchestra in the public schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned everything I know about reading music. Yeah, I learned it in school. I'm a total every good boy does fine, reader, but I read well enough where I can get through it. And if I'm on a session and there's something with a bunch of sharps and flats and I can't read it, I'll ask the piano player, and that's a good tip right there. Piano players, if there's one guy on the gig that knows how to read,
it's that one.
Yeah, because they all had piano lessons.
Yeah. Now, how does that translate or impact what you do here? Because this is complete foreign language to me, but I know there's a Nashville chart system or Nashville number system.
Yes, the Nashville number system is essentially, as you all know, every number on the scale has, or every chord on the scale has whatever key you're in has a numerical place. Say you're in the key of A. Well, A is your 1, D is your 4, your 5 is E. If you get a little, tricky, your 6 minor is a F sharp. So it's numerical, but these charts are just the roughest outline of really basically the tonic of the chord, and then from there you kind of have to figure it out on your own. Whereas with classical musicians, everything is written out, and I actually get into more of this on a later column that's not out yet. But for classical musicians, their part is for the most part to reproduce what the writer has prepared, and try and do it with, they can kind of, I guess their input is kind of the color of the note.
Yeah.
Like if Beethoven asks for forte, then they can decide how forte is
applied.
Yeah, they're going to lay into it. But with guitar, the great thing about guitar is it is an instrument of the people, and it's really about our own interpretation. which I think guitar players or people in pop music that play this way, no matter, but without written music so much, it's really about your own interpretation or your own putting your own stomp on things. For instance, that classical piece that I came in with, it's based on Bach's Bourrée, which is that little counterpart stuff, and it's pretty, the way Bach wrote it. It's got this very specific kind of cadence to it. But on guitar, it opens itself up to doing anything. You can do it fast, you can do it slow, you can put it wherever you want, or like do that kind of backbeat thing. Now that's the kind of stuff that would get you kicked out of an orchestra. But in our world, people are revered for making it their own thing. And so in a way,
So, can you elaborate? Because I don't know. It says it's your superpower.
Oh, okay. So I think part of the I skimmed the column this morning, so I can't really remember everything I wrote. But I think what's the superpower about it is that guitar players, in particular, while our classical counterparts are working on tuning in exactly to what the writer is trying to give us. What guitar players are doing, we're trying to put our own thing in. And I think the fact that because there isn't a lot of reading, guitar players are very good at interpretation. Good guitar players are good at their interpretation, and they're also really good at reading band members. Like when you don't know a song, but you can listen and tune in to what the other people are doing, you can kind of figure it out. Like I'll play cover tunes all the time where somebody will go into a song I don't know, but by kind of reading where the bass player is going, kind of watch his hands, sort of listen to where you think the changes are going, you're able to almost kind of read minds. Whereas classical players are reading the page and reading what the conductor is telling them. I think our superpower is that power of interpretation and finding what's inside you and reading the people on stage, reading the audience, letting it just go. It's so free.
It's wild to go back to your point about the sheet music, is that just my tenure at Premier Guitar, I've been going to NAMM for 16 years, 17 years, and see the footprint that a company like Hal Leonard, which is a sheet music oriented company, it has shrunk in size, which obviously they have their bread and butter with schools and scholastic and classical music, like you're saying. But there was huge for them. I'm sure many of us or many of you out there learned from Hal Leonard books.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's funny how that's shrunk.
I'm that kind of nerd. Yes. Well, because like when I first started playing guitar, again, I was just reading music in orchestra in grade school, and when my parents, with poor judgment but a loving heart, gave me a guitar, I wanted to play Walk This Way by Aerosmith.
Okay.
And so my mom took me to the local music store, Hanson Music in Billings, which is still there. And I bought the sheet music to Walk This Way. And the whole verse was just like open C the whole time. So it would be like, backstroking lover on the side underneath the car. It's like just not even close, I mean, not even close. But, as a guitar player, you get to the point where you listen to what Brad and Joe Perry were doing, and you're like, oh yeah. That is so much more than what's on the page.
Yeah, there's a lot more being done in terms of the coloring.
Yeah, and even that, even that brilliant rhythm part on that song, it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a pattern there, but it's seemingly arbitrary because they're changing it up all the time.
Well, that's the kind of the ear candy that we've always talked about, where those types of changes or those types of things that occur in music that are so slight, but it's what you your ear gravitates towards, because it's like you notice that slight alteration in what you perceive as a pattern.
Right. I mean, because there's, ultimately, we're drawn to patterns, and that's part of our. I mean, that's part of the reason why we developed as humans, with these great big brains of ours. But it's also why we still are so attracted to music. But when you got one little tweak in there, where the pattern alters slightly, on some level, it kind of excites us. We get a little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
When we
It's funny how that slight alteration is what keeps it going.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and that is what guitar is so great at. You can, if you listen to you listen to guys like Tommy Emmanuel, and every time he comes around on something, there's a variation, and it's like just a little tweak. And he's always inventing. I mean, great guitar players are always changing it up and always kind of pushing the envelope.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's the melody or the hook is still there, but it's something just a little bit different or off from your perception of what it should be or what you think it is.
Yeah.
Based on the patterns that came before it.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you take even more time away from it and you see Tommy perform, let's say, his Beatles medley.
Right.
You saw it before, but the next time you see him in town, completely different.
Totally different.
But the same songs he's covering.
And I mean, and God, you listen to guys like SRV, you never knew what tempo he would be at, or he would sometimes use scuttlebutt just so lightning fast that it's just dizzying, and then sometimes he'd kind of slow it down depending on what he felt like, and there always some sort of variation on that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the lifeblood.
Yeah.
Of music, but also I guess what you're saying about in your column for guitar playing.
Yeah, it really is. That is sort of the superpower of, I think, of our music, is that it is so personal, and we're there's not a lot of, there's some guitar players that are amazing mimics, but most of us kind of do our own thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's so beautiful that this amazing instrument, in it, everybody can kind of find their own voice.
There's something that's cool about when you teach someone, or if someone catches on to a riff that you're playing, or they want to learn something. I always notice this a lot of times with guitar players. Once they kind of get what you're saying, like the pattern or the basic chords of it, they're like, yeah, I got it. And then it's like they're absorbing it into who they are as a musician, and then they put their own little tweak on it, even though they might be playing the same riff for like Walk This Way or whatever it is.
Exactly. And then it's almost unrecognizable when they get through it. And you hear it with guitar players all the time. They start, you can hear the influences, but then you can hear where it went.
Yeah.
So it just keeps building on itself. I think it's, that's what's so cool about it.
Well, get out there and embrace your superpowers.
Yeah, embrace that superpower and keep watching these videos.
All right.
Cheers.